Princess! Please, no! You can't do this! Applejack cried. Celestia was laying on her back in the middle of the living room floor, her hooves holding Applejack on her stomach with her legs sprawled out wide. Applejack was also on her back as she laid on Celestia's stomach, looking up with her eyes once again as big as saucers as Celestia's mane and tail brought Big Macintosh down from above the two, gradually sliding him on top of her in a missionary position. The two struggled, but the more they did, the more they began to rub against each other, their bodies now fully connected in a way that only a married couple should. Both their faces blushed bright red, and the blush grew brighter as Celestia's tail slid over Big Macintosh's rump and began pumping it downward against Applejack. As the movements continued, Applejack lost herself for only a moment, but that was long enough for her hearty moan to escape her lips. This excited Celestia more, her already wild grin now spreading out further as drool began to drip from her mouth. She brought her head up over the two and pushed her muzzle down towards Applejack's, locking them in kiss and immediately plunging her tongue down into her mouth. As her tongue explored Applejack's mouth and down to the top of her throat, Celestia then wrapped her long, slender back legs up and all the way around to Big Macintosh's lower back, locking him more securely in place. Now, with her tail still on Big Macintosh's rump and her inner haunches firmly grasped against Applejack, she began to pump up and down against them both in a powerful rhythm. The stride started out slow, but quickly picked up the pace, pumping faster and harder while the movements became longer as well. Big Macintosh was getting hot. Very hot. His lower body rubbing between her sister's haunches while his chest was right up against hers. Full contact throughout their entire bodies. He tried his best to pull back and escape from this incredibly compromising position. But even his powerful muscles could not overpower the might that Princess Celestia was unleashing. After another minute, Celestia broke her lips away from Applejack's, and then up to Big Mac's, pushing her tongue past his lips immediately and down towards his throat. Big Mac could no longer see his sister below her, only the gaze from Celestia's eyes as his body pumped and bumped and grinded against another strong, feminine body. All that kept him from losing control before was the sight of his sister and the reassuring knowledge it gave him of letting him know that this was his sister, and he couldn't allow himself to get excited. With his view obscured, however, all he could feel was the deep kiss of a mare and the warm, seductive touch of his body against that of another gender's. He tried to close his eyes to allow him to focus on his sister's image, but the image of Celestia's seductive gaze had already burned into his mind, making it impossible to think of anything else. Applejack gasped suddenly, feeling another sensation coming from between her rear legs. She tried her best to resist it, knowing that this was not the work of a lover, but indeed her brother, and the sensation quickly took over as the feeling washed through her entire body, forcing her to moan out again. She bit her bottom lip, almost hard enough for it to stop bleeding. But that only lasted a few more pumps before she moaned again. And again. Her mind lost in the burning pleasure that developed now mainly from between her haunches. She closed her eyes and continued to moan, feeling her body sweating profusely as even Big Macintosh also began to sweat. Their heat seemed locked together forcefully, but the pleasure being generated was too much for either of them to withstand for too long. The grinding continued for what seemed like ages, both ponies on top of Celestia long since unable to fight against what was being forced on them. Though Big Macintosh never released a single moan, his body's reactions made up for it as he now seemed to be keeping pace with the rhythm all on his own. His control almost fully lost. Neither him nor his sister could take it for much longer at all, and Celestia knew this. She tightened her grip on both of them, pumping up and down with most of her might, sending both of their bodies ablaze in an immense pleasure. Though after only a couple of seconds they both yelled out at the top of their lungs, the new wetness forming below, and finally let their muscles go limp against each other. At the exact time, Celestia slowed her movements and stopped and released her grip on the two. She gently used her magic to levitate them both off of her and onto the couch beside them, both already passed out but still locked together. Celestia got up and gently brushed herself off with her mane and tail, and looked around the room. This was certainly Fluttershy's place, yet she was not here. And the fact that Big Macintosh was here now meant that Twilight and her friends were now aware of what was going on, and that she would be attempting to hide. Even though she knew they were already gone, she took the time to search the house, making sure that there was nothing else around. She looked outside, the darkness shrouding her vision as she tried to view into the distance. Unable to see far, she then realized that it would now become much more difficult to get what she was after. However, this would not stop her, Princess Celestia of Equestria, from attaining her prize. Trixie still does not understand why Princess Celestia would want to go to a backwater town such as Ponyville. What in all of Equestria could be so important for her there, even if she was going psycho? Trixie asked in a demanding tone as she rode beside Luna and Silver Shield on the flying carriage being pulled by 3 Pegasus guards with 2 other guards flying on either side of the carriage. Princess Celestia has a star pupil of hers, Luna explained. A mare she'd been personally tutoring since she was a little filly. After my sister assaulted me, I found a letter from her pupil that Celestia had left, leading me to believe that she had gone after her. Huh. Very well, Trixie huffed, not liking the idea of some pony other than her being Celestia's personal protege. Let's just get out there so that Trixie can do what she needs to, and perhaps even finally be recognized as the greatest and most powerful unicorn in all of Equestria. Why do you constantly refer to yourself in third person anyway? Luna asked, curious as to Trixie's boastful habit. Well, Trixie is just... Heads up, we have company, said Silver Shield, interrupting the two as he pointed his hoof up in front of them. Trixie and Luna both looked forward to see a rainbow blur quickly heading in their direction. End chapter 5.